Just a few days ago, a CBC Angus Reid Institute poll showed that 68% of Canadians want minorities to do more to fit into mainstream society instead of keeping to their own customs and languages. Surprisingly, only 53% of Americans said this about their own country. The difference can probably be attributed to Canada's multicultural policy that values a cultural mosaic over a melting pot. In 1971, during Pierre Trudeau's reign, Canada was the first country in the world to adopt state multiculturalism as an official policy. We decided that, as a nation, our new credo would be diversity is our strength, as our Liberal government likes to remind us every single day. But what the intellectuals and virtue-signaling elites failed to recognize is that you cannot mandate cultural relativism. Multiculturalism as an ideology has failed. People are not holding hands and singing Kumbaya. They're setting up cultural enclaves because they've been told that they shouldn't integrate. They've been told to hold on to all aspects of their native culture. And it can be exciting to see cool festivals and holidays and different dresses, but with no assimilation, these groups not only retain the good aspects of their culture, but the bad ones as well, the values that are undemocratic and lie in opposition to Western values. Elites living in gated communities and CBC journalists with their cushy jobs and security-guarded condos shake their heads in disbelief at this Angus Reid poll. How could so many Canadians oppose our beautiful multiculturalism? Well, maybe it's because they're tired of the segregation and distrust they see every single day. I find it very telling that instead of really addressing the problems people had with lack of assimilation, the CBC instead wrote a sob story about Muslims and blamed Donald Trump for Canadians' thoughts. The article reads in a way that suggests these enclaved communities are already doing so much and people just need to be more open to them. Like this sentence that says, Lal Khan Malik, the president of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat Canada, said his group is working hard to build connections in communities across the country. How could people possibly dislike this? Well, maybe, CBC, it's because Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat Canada is the same sect of Islam that applied for a housing grant from the City of Toronto to build an affordable apartment building, upon which they proceeded to refuse applications from would-be tenants if they were not Muslim. This included a man in a wheelchair who had a limited option for subsidized housing because of his disability. The reality is that the mainstream media is playing a narrative counter to what is happening in everyday life. As the CBC and the Georgia Straight tout these new immigrants' acceptance in the paper, someone's grandma is being denied service in a recent immigrant's shop because of their skin color, gender, or sexuality. My father moved us out of an area in Surrey, British Columbia when I was a kid because he would go to the coffee shop in the morning and couldn't speak to anyone because he spoke English. And no, he wasn't surrounded by French speakers. He was surrounded by people who couldn't speak either of Canada's national languages, or rather refused to. My father found it very sad. Now, he doesn't give a damn what your skin color is. He just likes to be able to interact with his own community and have some level of cultural unity, whether that be common sports teams, shared cultural values, a love of country, or just being able to speak the same language. But a lot of these people were more interested in India, Indian politics, the Indian language, and their own community. English speakers and more westernized Canadians are being pushed out of neighborhoods due to strong cultural change. Yet we don't seem to be discussing the fact that certain pieces of our cultural mosaic are enveloping other parts. There are areas where I can't even shop in and around Vancouver because I can't speak Chinese or Korean. I couldn't read the signs, and people would talk behind my back in a language that I couldn't understand while pointing at me. This unassimilated multiculturalism has bred so much tension and social conflict in Canada that people are sick and tired of it. They want Canada. We don't want China or India or the Caliphate of North America. We want Canada to be Canadian. And that includes Canadians of all skin colors. Believe me, most Canadians that moved here from other countries don't want Canada to turn into the places that they fled from. In fact, I guarantee a lot of the people who voted to have more minority assimilation were minorities themselves. Yet, despite this being a big issue for Canadians, our Prime Minister seems more focused on defending Muslim gender segregation with the phrase, "diversity is our strength," than dealing with the fact that the culture and economy of the West Coast is being sold off to the highest bidder right now. Just the other day, they were flying the flag of communist China outside of Vancouver City Hall. It's utter insanity. What's the point of calling us Canada if being Canadian means nothing but be whoever you want to be? What's the point of calling us a country if we have no other unique culture, language, or identifying factors? Why not join Sweden? Why not just join China? It's madness. And at some point, Canada is going to have to decide if we're going to be a sovereign nation. We're going to have to decide if we're going to be a country. Our politicians can't even touch the question of multiculturalism. They're horrified because they can't provide a satisfactory answer without offending almost everyone. They've come up with the perfect dodge. Just repeat diversity is our strength if ever faced with a tough question. Put a Band-Aid on that broken arm and hope no one notices. Just watch.
How do you reconcile your brand as a self-styled feminist prime minister with attendance at a gender-segregated event?
The fact is, the values that define Canada include respect and openness towards our full diversity. Indeed, understanding that diversity is a source of strength, not a source of weakness, is why I think that politicians need to be focused on bringing people together rather than fomenting divisions.
It is incredibly important, particularly now after the Paris attacks, particularly now with ISIL raging around the world, to stand up for real diversity and to say our diversity is our strength.
So we in
Canada are not going to say Muslims are worse than Christians or are worse than Jews or are worse than atheists.
The ideas are worse.
No, and their culture is not worse. And we also appreciate that ISIL does not represent Muslims.
Diversity is our strength is not going to work 20 or 50 years from now. It's not going to work when BC essentially becomes a Chinese province. It's not going to work when Sharia zones start appearing. It's not going to work when the government is being petitioned to teach in languages outside of English and French or to institute gender segregation. These are the issues that we are going to have to face in the future. Is it a good idea to extinguish Canadian identity once and for all? I think most Canadians, including recent immigrants, know that nothing good will come of that. And that's why 68% of Canadians want assimilation. But does our Liberal government even care? Or will they simply repeat diversity is our strength? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that video, then be sure to hit the subscribe button to check out more content.